People everywhere are starting to listen to him. He's going on French, British, Italian, Japanese television.
This is the Wide World of Weingarten.
Last train from Chicago. A wino approached me in the lobby of Union Station and said he was a friend of John Madden. I was supposed to meet him here, he said. Our train for the coast leaves at 2:30. He looked anxiously down at his watch. Maybe he meant I should meet him on the train, he said. You think he's already on board? Let's hope so, I said. The damn thing leaves in 12 minutes, and I'll be lucky to make it myself. I was hauling a huge cart of baggage, not knowing which one of the many tunnels led out to the California Zephyr, and Maria had gone off in a funk with all the cash and also our tickets. Madden's friend was still ambling along beside me. I see you're wearing a Raiders jacket, he said, so I thought you might have seen Johnny. Not yet, I said, and this is not a Raiders jacket. It's from the flight of Apollo 11. He leaned closer to examine the finely embroidered lettering on the shoulder patch of my NASA-style silver jacket. The Eagle has landed, he muttered. Yes, sir. I sure as hell remember that one. Are you the guy that walked on the moon? I nodded. Maria was nowhere in sight, and our train was pulling out in 9 minutes from some gate that I didn't know and probably couldn't get through anyways because I had no money and no tickets. I eyed Madden's friend with new interest. I knew John from Oakland, I said. What gate are we leaving from? It's number 22, he said. We're late. Let me help you with those bags. He seized the bar of my luggage cart, a thing about the size of 2 bathtubs, and proceeded to haul it through a crowd at top speed, shouting, Get out of the way! Get out of the way! It's John Madden! I followed sheepishly in his wake, but convinced that he would almost certainly get us through gate 22 and safely onto the train. He was, after all, on his way to the coast with Big John. There would be no misunderstanding at the gate, ticket or no tickets. Our train leaves in 7 minutes, and there was no time to check character references. Johnny will be in the club car, the wino said. We have a big suite in the back. He always goes to the bar. I travel with him a lot. That's good, I thought. A wild-eyed man in a red uniform bared down on us. Get your hands off that cart, he shouted. That's Red Cap property. Let me have a look at your ticket. I smiled meaningfully at my buddy. He has them, I said. We're with John Madden, and this is part of his luggage from the Super Bowl. The Amtrak man laughed. Don't mess with me, he snapped. You people have tickets or not? My own memory is vague now on the details of what happened next. It was all in a matter of seconds. My man looked wildly around him, then suddenly bent over and grabbed his stomach with both hands. Call Johnny, he moaned. I'm having another attack. Just then, Maria arrived, waving a handful of tickets, and the Amtrak man reluctantly let us through. A real-life red cap suddenly materialized and took control of the luggage cart. Let's hurry up, he ordered. Get a move on, folks. This train runs on time. We rushed down the platform in a confused babble and arrived at a big cave-like door to our sleeper, the last car on the train with 30 seconds to spare. I heard whistles from up front and a roar of steam vents underneath. The Zephyr was pulling out. Many hands lifted our luggage, and within moments we were rolling at speeds through the dead old industrial wasteland of what was once the main business district west of Wall Street. Riding the rails out of Chicago is a quick education in the socio-economic realities of recent American history. Miles of dead factories and warehouses, abandoned brick hulks, and boarded-up windows and signs like Samac Meats and Adams Pressed Metals Corp. We were just settling into our deluxe bedroom compartment, number 3530, adjusting the bunks and the shower head and the typewriter table by the big picture window when I realized that we were, in fact, not alone. There was a ratty old suitcase in the room that I didn't recognize, and also another person. It was Madden's friend. He moved smoothly into the compartment and pulled the curtain closed behind him. Jesus Christ, man, he said as he sat down at the end of the bunk. You sure as hell travel heavy, and I thought we'd never get all that stuff aboard. Where's Johnny? I asked him. Don't worry, he said, lighting up one of my Dunhills. I'll find him. Just let me sit here for a minute, or at least until they take the tickets. I smacked him on the side of his head, and suddenly he all went to pieces. Please, he blurted. Don't turn me in. I have to be in California tomorrow. They'll revoke my parole. He slumped on a bunk and began sobbing. I'm sorry I lied to you, he moaned, but I had to get out of town. They were after me. And besides, you looked like a Raiders fan. I thought you would be on my side. I shook my head sadly and reached into my Spanish leather kit bag, coming up with a small plastic tag from a long ago conference of National District Attorneys Association, which occurred in Las Vegas, Nevada in the time of Richard Nixon. It said, Thompson, Hunter, Los Angeles, California. Underneath the name was a small 5-pointed lawman's badge with the silver scales in the middle. The wino went instantly wild when I showed it to him. You lying bastard, he screamed. I knew there was something wrong with you. You're a cop. You were never a friend of John Madden. He wouldn't do this to me. Then he leaped sideways off the bunk and grabbed for my bottle of scotch. A brief scuffle ensued. Then the steward Frank Thompson, arrived with a rope. I had no choice. We had him taken off forcibly by railroad dicks in Napersville, still cursing me for betraying what he called the spirit of the Raiders. He was right in a sense, and I felt vaguely unclean as the Zephyr rolled out once again towards Galesburg and Monmouth and the Mississippi River, which we would cross on schedule around sundown, February 3rd, 1986. This is the Wide World of Weingarten. It's December 29th, Tuesday, 11:50. The Fenway Bowl is just underway. Looks like it's 7-0 Michigan. I just read you an excerpt from probably my favorite Hunter S. Thompson book, Generation of Swine, Gonzo Papers Volume 2, Tales of Shame and Degradation in the 1980s. Of all the Hunter S. Thompson books, and I think I've read just about everything there is to read from Hunter S. Thompson, I think that one's my favorite. That was a good story. Had John Madden as a character in it, and I thought it was nice thing to read today to start off the show. As you probably already know, John Madden died yesterday. I haven't had a chance to watch a documentary on him that came out recently, but I heard very good things about it. Madden does pop up as a character in the Green Bay Packers history book that I've talked about a couple times. The Packers tried to hire him in the late 1970s to replace Bart Starr as head coach, but he wouldn't take the job while Starr was still under contract. He wanted them to fire him first, so the deal ended up falling through. It didn't work out. History might have been a little different if the Packers had secured John Madden to lead their franchise in the mid-1970s, but alas, didn't work out, and we got the John Madden we know today. Big Madden football fan, so he had a big impact on my relationship with football, as he did everybody probably listening to this. So big loss for the game. He was a cool guy. In other news, baseball news, Kyle Seeger decided to retire from baseball just as I started recording. He spent all 11 years of his career with the Mariners, so he'll retire. One of the rare guys who got to spend his whole career with one team. I was a little surprised that the Texans couldn't convince him to go play with his brother. Corey Seager, who they just signed to a huge contract. I thought that was a reasonable landing spot, but I guess he's decided he's made enough money and he's hanging it up. So one all-star appearance for Kyle Seager, 251 career hitter, 242 home runs, 1 Gold Glove. He'll be remembered as a mainstay in the Mariners lineup through a lot of lean years, an above-average third baseman, a mostly disappointed fantasy third baseman when I owned him in my dynasty league, at least. But he'll mostly be remembered as Corey Seager's older brother, and that's it. As they say in the end of Goodfellas, that's that. Goodbye, Corey Seager. No Thursday night football this week, so we don't get an NFL game to talk about, to analyze this week, but we do get bowl games every day as long as there aren't any more last-minute cancellations. I'm looking at UCLA. UCLA went through their whole 3 weeks of bowl practice. They went to SeaWorld, and then they pulled out 4 hours before the game. I think that was pretty weak on their part. If you flew out from North Carolina, spent a lot of money to go to San Diego, you still get to have a good time in San Diego, but really disappointing, kind of way to cancel the game from UCLA. I'm not impressed with them as a athletic department here making this decision. They're going to say that, we didn't have defensive linemen, we ran out of players, whatever. Yeah, you knew you had problems, and you still went to SeaWorld, and 4 hours before the game is just, that's disrespectful to the North Carolina program. So I do expect we're going to see more cancellations. The Holiday Bowl is a pretty big bowl to have a team back out on, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see more cancellations before the big New Year's Bowls, but hopefully the teams that do cancel do it more professionally than the way UCLA did. As far as the bowl games, I've watched most of them so far, as I watch most football stuff. I think they've mostly been glorified scrimmages and mostly uninteresting. That hasn't stopped me from betting on them, mind you, but this is, to take nothing away from the teams that are putting themselves at risk of COVID and traveling and doing this all. Like, a lot of these games have just been absolutely disappointing and really probably should have just been skipped this year. A Monday morning Nevada versus a MAC team from Detroit just was totally unnecessary in that game. That game didn't provide meaningful reps, I don't think, for very many players. And I'm underwhelmed by bowl season, but yesterday I was way off. I bet Mississippi State. I bet them over. I laid -10, and they got routed 34-7. I fell for the personality call to Mike Leach, and I didn't look at Mike Leach, the coach. So you preach to listeners and to other gamblers not to fall into certain traps, and I fell into one myself yesterday. So that Mississippi State game was moderately costly for me. Had a good day Monday, gave a little bit of a back Tuesday. Hopefully we're going to right the ship Wednesday. Still a long week, especially going into the weekend with the big bowl games and a big NFL slate, so nothing to worry about. But, I really probably should have checked that Mississippi State had both their starting offensive tackles out. Those are kind of important things to look at in bowl games, and that was on me for not checking, and cost myself a whole bunch of money. So that happens to me too. Not you guys aren't the only ones who lose money. Bowl games have been fun. Mostly it's just about knowing the news, knowing who's out, who's sitting, who has COVID. Today we have the Pinstripe Bowl. It's already underway. 7-0 I mentioned. Cheez-It Bowl, Alamo Bowl later today. Those are the only games. 3-game slate for Wednesday. Nothing really interests me, although I do think if I had to bet anything, I would likely bet Oklahoma here -7, if only for the fact that I know the defensive backs at Oregon for this game are mostly converted wide receivers and backups, so I would very much expect Oklahoma to do whatever they want on offense if they so choose to show up. Bob Stoops, I think, is the interim coach, so at least we know they got a guy who's going to get the troops motivated there. So Oklahoma -7 or pass for me is the only thing I'd go in that game. Pinstripe Bowl is already underway. Looks like there was a steady flow of Maryland money. They closed, I think, -5. They're up 7 now, so I don't know. We'll see how that game ends. New Year's Eve, Friday, we start getting the better tier of bowl games, and I bet Michigan State 7.5 and the money line against Georgia. Hope I'm not being a square betting the dog there, but I really wasn't impressed with Georgia when I watched them against Alabama. I thought they had a little bit of a cupcake schedule, and Michigan's no cupcake. Provided we don't get any negative COVID news, I think it's a good spot to take Michigan over a touchdown. If you're interested in the Rose Bowl, the best line's already gone. If you want Utah, 7.5, 7, 6, 6.5 were all available before the news that multiple Ohio State players are sitting out. It's down to 4.5. Don't love 4.5 as much, but I'm going to the game. I usually been going to the Rose Bowl the last couple of years, so gotta have some action on it. I have some Utah. Keep my eye out for news there. If I hear anything, I'll adjust my betting accordingly, but I like Utah here. I think Kyle Whittingham's kind of coach that has his team motivated, and Utah is going to be super motivated for this game. Rose Bowl is not something that a university program like them takes for granted. A lot of teams have been to many Rose Bowls, and Utah has not, so I really expect them to show up. I don't know if Ohio State is going to show up for this game when they were on the fringe of a playoff spot before losing to Michigan. But Utah, I think, will. I think they'll show up. I like the points here. And then we get Ole Miss, one of my favorite teams to bet on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. New Year's Day, we get them on Saturday night. Baylor minus 120 in the Sugar Bowl. I bet some Ole Miss. I like this game. We will talk about this game in more detail later this week. I promise you there will be more podcasts later this week. It won't be another week until you get one. Onto the NFL, where there's a lot of meat on the bones this week. Carson Wentz went on the COVID list, and the line for the Colts Raiders dropped from 8 to something like 1.5 or 2. A couple hours later, the NFL announced they were adopting new CDC recommendations for COVID isolation, and coincidentally, just in time for the playoffs, the isolation time is cut from 10 to 5 days. What a break for the NFL, man! That's just what a break in the science, breakthrough. So we will likely see less COVID stuff in the playoffs. No quarterbacks. We're not going to see any quarterbacks miss games with COVID unless they actually have a serious case of COVID. I would probably bet money on that. But so we saw the line drop, saw the line pop back up again, and it's likely Wentz is going to be cleared before the game. If he's not, Sam Erlinger, is that how you say his name? I don't even know. Going to be the quarterback for the Colts. If I was the Raiders, I'd play, if it's a Wentzless game, I'd play a 5-man defensive front against the Colts and stop the run. It's what George Allen and the Redskins did against the Packers in the 1972 playoffs. I mentioned to you I've been reading a lot about the history of the Packers, so a lot of this stuff is on top of my mind. But the Packers had a rookie running back named John Brockington, who was the first player in NFL history to rush for 1,000 yards his first 3 pro seasons. And Allen knew this. Allen knew that they had a running-based offense, and he played 5 defensive linemen to stop the run and dared the Packers to let their rag-arm quarterback Scott Hunter throw the ball. Dan Devine, the Packers head coach at the time, wasn't very smart. He wasn't an X's and O's guy. It's very weird how he was such a good football coach, because he was a dumbass, for lack of a better word, and he didn't know anything about the X's and O's of football. So strange case how Dan Devine had a successful coaching career. I guess you could just chalk it up to times were different back then. But Dan Devine wasn't smart enough or capable of making adjustments, so he spent the entire game running his running back straight into a 5-man defensive front, and they lost to the Redskins. They were the Redskins at that point, who went on to the Super Bowl and lost to the 1972 Dolphins. So I don't know. I don't think the Packers would have really come out ahead versus the Dolphins had they advanced, and I don't even think they would have won the NFC Championship that year had they advanced out of that game. But 5-man defensive fronts do work, even if we don't see them very often. That's how I would defend against the Colts this week. But yeah, the Packers lost that game, and they didn't go back to the playoffs for another 10 years till 1982. Strike shortened season. Like I said, a lot of Packers history on my mind lately. The book's behind me down there. You can't see it, but 4 volumes, 1,000 pages. Looking forward to finishing it this week. Other thing, back to John Madden real quick. I'd recently been thinking about how the AP and the BBWAA for baseball, they get too much power over voting and awards. And it's crazy in this day and age with the leagues having official gambling partners, that sports bettors, and sports bettors drive fan engagement. And we don't have a say in the MVP and the awards voting, even though they're marketed by official MLB, NFL betting partners. They're marketed as here, come bet on this, come bet on the MVP, but we don't get to decide anything. I mean, I've said many times before, I think gamblers should be represented by the Associated Press when voting for who's the most valuable. I have far better insight on who's been truly valuable this season than several beat writers who haven't seen half these players play. Or maybe you've only seen them once or twice. But what's all have to do with John Madden is that I had already decided before this Madden news broke. It was just kind of a coincidence that they announced John Madden died yesterday, but I'd been working on this since at least last week. But I had decided that I need to do my own all Wide World of Weingarten VSiN team, in my own version of the All-Pro team, All Madden team. I've already been working on the criteria about that for this for about a week. So like I said, it was just a coincidence that John Madden's death was announced yesterday. I'd been like I said, I've been working on some new material last week instead of podcasting, and that was one of the things I wanted to do my own all Weingarten, all Wiesen team, because then I can at least have a yearly record of the guys I think are the best, like Dr. Z used to do for Sports Illustrated or whatever. But I'm going to start working on that when the regular season ends. So I look forward to working on that for my own interest, but I hope everyone else likes it. As far as the MVP race goes, this is the big race right now. Several candidates remaining. Main ones being the 4 quarterbacks, two other offensive players. But I think the MVP is a lot closer than people think right now. And one of the reasons I think that is because Circa hasn't reposted or repriced the odds for player futures going on more than 10 days now. Likely if they don't post it today or tomorrow and, give them another day, I think usually they come out closer to Wednesday, Thursday than they do Monday and Tuesday. Anyways, but they didn't come out last week. If they don't come out this week, it'll be a full 2 weeks without them updating their numbers. And typically when the market's down, it's because there's a lot going on and they don't want to get caught out of position, with a COVID announcement that Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers is out with COVID and it could screw something up and take a big bet, etc. But they just haven't posted it yet. So I'm relying on numbers from DraftKings and BetMGM and FanDuel and other books. But I mean, truthfully, and I don't say this to be obnoxious or anything, but my numbers are better at futures than most of those books. I'm more accurate and I could make a better market than FanDuel. I could make a better market than BetMGM. I could move faster. I mean, I find stuff that's hanging out there all the time that should be adjusted. Like Andy Reid, for example, was 150 to 1, 100 to 1 for Coach of the Year after they beat the Chargers on a Friday. They didn't get that number fixed till Saturday, but I'm relying on numbers that I don't trust, so I have to go off my own numbers. And without Circa, I don't have sort of like a pilot light for comparing my numbers to anything else. I don't compare my numbers to BetMGM or anybody because why do you compare to numbers that are wrong? There's no point. But I think the MVP race is closer than people think. Cooper Kupp, my biggest future. I have him 200 to 1, so I'm a bit biased, and obviously I recognize the fact that wide receivers have never won this award. Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, Hall of Famers, Calvin Johnson, never won this award. Never really came close. I do think Rice probably was a runner-up a couple times. I'd have to check on that. But Cooper Kupp has a legitimate chance to win. He's leading in every category. He has as many 90-yard receiving games this season as the next 2 players on the list below him combined. That's Devontae Adams and Deebo Samuels, both having great seasons themselves. But I don't know how you compare Cooper Kupp and what he's doing at wide receiver with Jonathan Taylor or any of the other guys. If Derrick Henry was healthy, I'm not even sure we would care so much about with Jonathan Taylor what he's doing, which isn't to say he's not having a good season and not having an exceptional season. But there have been many seasons where running backs with incredible volume and usage rates have put up huge rushing and touchdown numbers. Kupp is leading the NFL in receptions, yards, touchdowns, triple crown. That's something Jerry Rice only did once in his career. He's almost 300 yards clear of second place. For good measure, he's also leading the NFL in big plays, yards per game, yards after the catch, first down. He's fumbled the ball 0 times. As a receiver, he doesn't get the protection going over the middle that a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady gets in the pocket. If you breathe incorrectly on Tom Brady or if you touch Aaron Rodgers' shoulder pads, you get a flag. If you tee off on Cooper Kupp going over the middle and headhunt him, you might get a targeting call, you might not. They are calling targeting more. It's kind of annoying, truthfully. But Cooper Kupp doesn't get any protection. He doesn't have linemen out in front blocking him for him, although they do run screen plays. I will admit that. He goes out, he catches the ball in traffic, he takes hits. And when he's not doing all that, he's blocking. He's one of the highest graded run blockers for wide receivers. He's out there. Go watch him. He's out there on the edge. blocking guys. He does not take plays off. He's not a what do you call him, like a Randy Moss or a guy you could tell when Randy Moss wasn't getting the ball. Sometimes he was just kind of standing around. He didn't block hard, but Cooper Kupp's a guy who is engaged every play. If he's not getting the ball, he's blocking. He's the focal point of that Rams offense. He gets a share of targets more than any other player, I'd have to say, any other wide receiver this year. Absurdly high share of Stafford's targets. But I'm not saying all this that I'm saying, Cooper Kupp's going to win, you should go bet him. I'm saying you should have bet him 200-1 a couple weeks ago when I was saying that. You should have bet him at 100-1. Now, don't go bet him at 30-1 or 18-1, or at least don't go and make a huge bet on him. He's not going to, most likely still not going to win. But the important thing is that the path is there. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but Aaron Rodgers is the comprehensive favorite front runner, -175. Tom Brady's drifted out to about 750, 7.5-1 after being the favorite for several weeks, past couple months. Patrick Mahomes, he's still getting double-digit odds despite 8 straight wins. The Chiefs haven't lost since before Halloween. If you break down the numbers kind of real quickly, Brady's got 4,580 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 100.1 QB rating, 65.7 QBR. I don't love the QB rating, QBR as metrics, but it is a good way to just sort of standardize and quantify the numbers in a broad context with the other quarterbacks. I don't have my own sort of DVOA or proprietary numbers that other sites have. I just kind of look at my own stuff. I can interpret numbers myself, but I don't need some sort of made up metric to quantify stuff that's in front of me. Brady's got 37 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 2 losses to the Saints, lost to the Rams. A lot of garbage time numbers. If you go through his box scores, 2 touchdowns here late in the game, 35-7 to go up 42-7. Sure, it's a touchdown in the box score, but it doesn't really matter. He's a volume accumulator this year. The numbers are great, but Brady's a stat whore. He knows what numbers he needs. If you ask him, hey Brady, how many touchdowns do you have? He knows exactly how many touchdowns he has. He knows exactly his yards. He knows exactly how many yards he threw for last week. He cares about the stats, and he will probably use these last 2 games at the Jets and Panthers to pad his stats a little bit more for the history books. I don't think that necessarily makes him the MVP, but they're very good numbers. Patrick Mahomes, 4,310 yards, 33 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 97.5 QB rating, 59 QBR. Not too far off Tom Brady's numbers. The early season back-to-back losses to the Ravens and the Chargers hurt the Chiefs, but the offense wasn't the problem in those losses. They started the season with 33, 35, 24, 42, 20, and 31 points until a 27-3 loss to the Titans. Still having a hard time explaining exactly how that happened. But, you have a 27-3 loss to the Titans, Mahomes' worst game of the season. Wasn't necessarily much worse than Aaron Rodgers' Week 1 blowout loss to the Saints, where the Packers scored 3 points, or Tom Brady being shut out 9-0, third shutout of his career against the Saints as well. So, you're looking at everybody's bad games. Josh Allen had that 9-6 loss to the Jaguars. Explain that one. Everyone had a bad game this season, so I wouldn't necessarily throw out Patrick Mahomes because he had one bad game. Everybody's had at least one bad game. And when you look at Mahomes' numbers in context to Rodgers and Brady, there's no reason why he should still be double digits. And I think I've been, I slowly bet on Mahomes every week. It's been a pattern for the last couple of years that if I could find a good number on him, I add a little bit. I think Mahomes, especially if the Chiefs win 2 more games, is very live for MVP. I don't think Rodgers has this locked up. Josh Allen, another guy, 4,048 yards, 34 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 96.6 rating, 60.7 QBR. Similar numbers to Mahomes. Bills likely to win the division. He's also rushed for 619 yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. He's 12 rushing yards away from surpassing his career high. So maybe we should give him some consideration, a little more than he's getting at 16-1 or 18-1. The Bills finished the season with the Falcons and the Jets. So no reason Allen couldn't add to these already excellent numbers. 2 more wins. I don't know. I think if you told me is this guy having a better season or a worse season than Aaron Rodgers, I don't know. I think with Aaron Rodgers, he's played one less game than everybody, and he trails the rest of the MVP yardage and just gross yardage with 3,689 yards, passing yards, 33 touchdowns is in line with everybody else. Four interceptions, I think, is the thing that people are saying, oh, well, he only has 4 interceptions, and Brady has 11, and Mahomes has 13. And, yeah, that's a big turnover difference, but I don't think it's necessarily MVP worthy. All things considered, Rodgers is having a great year, but when you consider the way quarterbacks are protected in this era compared to previous eras, I don't think these numbers are that extraordinary that we need to give him the MVP or that he should be minus 175 for MVP. Rodgers does lead the NFL, 110.8 quarterback rating, 67.8 QBR, leads the NFL in both, I believe. Only Joe Burrow is within 6 points of him for QB rating. So if we're just talking about quarterbacks, I think it's pretty obvious. Even if you look at advanced metrics or PFF numbers, Rodgers is the best quarterback based on all the advanced analytics sort of stuff. And he probably deserves to be the favorite, but I'm not sure I'd bet on him at this number. Even if I thought he was going to win, I'm not going to lay minus 175 here. When you put Rodgers' season in context with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, all 4 are division winners. They all have about the same amount of touchdowns. Difference comes down to some interceptions, and then I kind of think, well, Josh Allen has 600 rushing yards. That's kind of valuable. Aaron Rodgers put himself in front of his team, lied about the COVID stuff, missed a game. I wonder if anybody in the media might hold that against him if it comes down to him versus somebody else. And then I looked at the Packers schedule and I said, well, they lost to the Vikings. They could lose to them again this weekend. They barely beat the Browns and the Ravens last 2 weekends. And the Ravens, they were walking wounded, and they still needed a missed 2-point conversion at the end to hold on against the Ravens. Then they did beat the Browns last week. The Browns weren't really coming back, but a 2-point win on the box score, it shows, was a little less competitive than that. But no guarantee the Packers win this weekend versus the Vikings. Could see Rodgers' number drop there, give somebody else an opportunity to make up some ground. Granted, the first Packers-Vikings game was a 34-31 shootout, and the Vikings had the ball last. But I could see Rodgers' number coming down a bit with a bad game. Conversely, 3-4 touchdown performance versus the Vikings on Sunday Night Football might seal it going into Week 18. But if you look at the Packers' schedule, I mean, really just go through what's their most impressive win. Beating the Rams at home, 36-28. Kupp had 7 receptions, 10 targets, 96 yards. 96 yards for that game without a touchdown. I think that might have been the Packers' best win of the season. Their Thursday night win against the Cardinals on the road looks slightly less impressive in retrospect, with the Cardinals on a 3-game losing streak. Lost to the Lions. They lost to the Lions 2 weeks ago now. I don't know. I think the Packers are a very good team. I think pump the brakes a little bit on the MVP candidacy here. Numbers at minus 175. I certainly wouldn't bet on it. And then we have Jonathan Taylor, to circle back to him. 1,626 rushing yards, 19 touchdowns, 17 rushing, 2 receiving. Taylor's closing in on 2,000 yards from scrimmage right now. 366 rushing yards gives him 1,962 total yards, which is cool. But you also got to keep in mind that between the carries and the receptions, Taylor has touched the ball 333 times this season. That's a lot. Cooper Kupp, for comparison, has touched the ball 136 times this season. That's 132 receptions, 3 rushes for 0 yards, and an option pass in the Packer game, the aforementioned Packer game, where he threw a 25-yard touchdown pass to Van Jefferson on 1st and 10 from the Packers' 25-yard line in the second quarter. Would have I think given the Rams the lead. Instead, they ended up kicking a field goal on that drive. I could be wrong. My memory get fuzzy on occasion. But I do remember that he threw a 25-yard touchdown pass that was overturned on review. And this is kind of thing where I hope people keep this in mind if you're listening, but don't keep it too in mind so I can bet on it first. But if the Rams do make the Super Bowl, I would definitely not be surprised to see that Cooper Kupp option pass play be used. I would bet on it if I could bet Cooper Kupp to throw a touchdown in the Super Bowl if we are lucky to get that far. I will definitely make that bet. I would very, very likely expect to see that trick play pop up in the playoffs, that specific trick play from that game. So, Jonathan Taylor having a almost 500-yard lead over Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb for the rushing title is a good accomplishment on paper, but that to me says a lot more about the Colts offensive line than it does Taylor being better than Mixon or Chubb. If you put Chubb or Mixon in Indy and give them 20 carries a game behind that offensive line, they'd likely put up similar numbers. But that's what happens when you get a good running back and a good offensive line, and you're committed to 20 plus touches a game. And Derrick Henry, we haven't talked about him for a while because he's been injured for 2 months, but he's still 6th in the NFL in rushing, despite not having played in a game in almost 8 weeks. Taylor's averaging 108.4 yards a game, still almost 10 yards less than Henry's rushing average when he got injured. He was leading the league at 117.1 yards per game pre-injury. So even with the volume numbers that Taylor's putting up, I'm not even sure it's fair to call him the best running back in the NFL right now, just the healthiest running back in the NFL. He's just the guy in the best situation. He has the most attempts volume behind the best offensive line. Keep in mind, like I said, 333 touches compared to 136 for Kupp. And that's when that's when I say I'm not even sure why Kupp is 18-1 or worse, even higher, as high as 30-1 at I think BetMGM or FanDuel still. And Taylor's 6-1 at DraftKings. How is he single digit odds versus how is Taylor 6-1 and Kupp double digits? I think that's crazy to me. But really for betting purposes, I would still add to my Mahomes position at double digit odds, and I would consider Josh Allen. I don't know if I'm dying to bet another quarterback, but I think Josh Allen, if you have a big number on him, has a legitimate shot. And I'm already holding Kupp at a big number. So keep an eye on Kupp this weekend versus the Ravens. Their secondary is missing just about everybody. I think 7 of their top 8 are out, and it's a big game. I mean, a big game. A big game from Kupp here, like 10 receptions, 2 touchdowns, might move him closer to the front. He's already made one hurdle. He's already jumped one major hurdle, which is flipping his odds ahead of his own quarterback. Stafford has drifted out of the race with 3 interceptions last week, so Kupp is the highest Ram, although you could make an argument that Aaron Donald deserves consideration. We're not going to get into defensive players winning MVP. I don't see that happening, but it's a conversation that should happen because, defense is half of football, and there's a lot of guys out there who do great stuff, and they never get serious MVP consideration anymore. I don't like single game parlays, so I won't recommend any sort of Kupp stacking stuff. But if you could bet alt sort of props, if you can get them over 10, 11, 12, 13 receptions this weekend. Joe Burrow just threw for 525 yards versus this Ravens secondary, so I don't see any reason why the Rams couldn't put up crazy numbers this weekend. You could probably make an argument that Cooper Kupp versus practice squad cornerbacks can have 20 catches, 15 catches, put up any number he wants. So it's really going to be a function of how many targets he gets and how much Stafford throws the ball this weekend. But a big weekend from Kupp could solidify the Rams NFC West title chances, would give them a home playoff game, and that would be another big step, a division title, for getting Cup to serious MVP contendership. Truthfully, the path that's going to need to happen for Cup to have a chance to win, the Rams are going to have to win their next 2 games. Cup's going to have to put up, extraordinary numbers, probably at least 2 to 3 more touchdowns, if not more, the last 2 weeks. But he's going to have to increase his numbers, win the Triple Crown, the receiving Triple Crown. The Rams are going to have to win the division, and likely he's going to have to break 2,000 yards. I think psychologically, for some reason, if you see that 2,000-yard number, you're going to be more inclined to vote for him than if you see 1975, and well, he beat Calvin Johnson. He's the record holder, but psychologically, I think the 2,000 number is what he needs to hit. Gonna take a break real quick so I can check the score. Welcome back. Just took a quick break. It is now 21-3 in the Pinstripe Bowl. I'm not watching the game. I just see this box score up because I have a couple bets on some Virginia Tech unders, some team total unders and stuff. But I see 5 minutes to go in the first half. Not sure this is going to be anything actionable you could do with it by the time you could listen, but 21-3 is the score I see. Looks like the Maryland money was right. Virginia Tech looks disinterested, and another rousing bowl blowout on Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning? I think it's Wednesday. Yes, it's Wednesday. So a wonderful Wednesday morning bowl blowout. Another glorified scrimmage. We just went over the MVP. My thoughts on MVP with what's his name, Patrick Mahomes still in the race, and Cooper Kupp, my new Shohei Ohtani, my new Yordan Alvarez. Hopefully he can make a case down the stretch the last 2 weeks. But the defensive player of the year is another market where things really up in the air. I think the favorites are overvalued, and the second wave of guys is where the betting really resides. If we're using the DraftKings numbers this week, because those are the best numbers I have available. But DraftKings has Micah Parsons as the co-favorite with TJ Watt, both 2-1. Behind them, Trevon Diggs, 7.5-1. Donald, 8. Myles Garrett, 10. Going to focus on those 5 guys as the main contenders, although there were several other deserving guys who will be worth all-pro consideration. And definitely I'm going to have a hard time picking my all VEASAN Wide World of Weingarten team. There's many worthy candidates, both offense and defense, but specifically on defense, I'm going to go through these top 5 guys and tell you what I see and what I think. And what I see is TJ Watt is 17.5 sacks in 13 games, 4 forced fumbles. This guy who is deserving front runner, but going against him is the fact that the Steelers are going to miss the playoffs, and being a elite defender with volume sack numbers on a non-playoff team is a negative for me. I think Watt is likely going to finish runner-up again. He was runner-up last year. He's likely going to be runner-up this year. Not to say he's not a contender. 17.5 sacks, leading the league, going for the record. All great things, but that's what you get, is you get a plaque for having the most sacks or having the sack record. Doesn't necessarily make you the defensive player of the year having the most sacks. I'll get to that in a minute why. But Micah Parsons, the other co-favorite, 13 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Excuse me real quick. I just want to get this box score back up. 13 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, playing linebacker and rush edge for the Cowboys. He's contributing to a defensive title. That should get bonus points. Looks like a home run first-round pick, but I wouldn't bet him at 2-1. There's a lot more I can say about Micah Parsons. He's a lock for the defensive rookie of the year, but I think this is way too short of a price, and he's an elite defensive edge rusher, but he's grading out top tier. He's grading out same as Myles Garrett, but again, I don't necessarily think we just need to hand him the defensive player of the year award his rookie year. Huge upside though, great future for him. Trevon Diggs, he's Micah Parsons' teammate, and I think probably the better bet for for Defensive Player of the Year. He has 11 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 21 passes defended, tied for the league lead in passes defended. 11 interceptions is the most in, I think, the last 40 years or so. And he's not done. He's still got a chance to add to that total. There's some arguments that he's given up like the most receiving yards among cornerbacks this year. And I do understand that argument, but this is a results award, not a process award. This is a reward for the results you get for the contributions you make on defense, and 11 interceptions is worthy of serious consideration. I think 7.5 to 1, 8 to 1 is still way too high on Diggs. Another guy who's way too high is Aaron Donald, who only has 12 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. His contributions, his numbers don't necessarily show up because he's an interior lineman, but he's a game-changing presence, a legitimate game-changing guy. And truthfully, I talk about playmaker theory, and the 15, 25 guys at any time in the NFL that can legitimately change and take over a game. TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, Trevon Diggs, Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett, all good examples, great examples of what I mean when I say game-changing playmakers, playmaker theory. Those guys all fit playmaker theory. But Aaron Donald doesn't necessarily show up the way the other guys do because he's an interior lineman, and he is an MVP worthy level player. Just he doesn't get the tackles and the sacks that other guys get playing on the edge. But an example of how meaningful and how important he is to the Rams would be the Rams-Cardinals game, where Donald dominated the offensive line. The whole Rams defensive line dominated the Cardinals offensive line, but the Cardinals were just beat after that game. They lost the next week. I think it was to the Lions. They were just wiped out from getting worked by that Rams defensive line. That's what a game-changing defensive line and Aaron Donald, the leader of that defensive line, could do for you. Myles Garrett, another example of game changer. He's drifted out 10 to 1. He has 15 sacks, forced fumble, a couple touchdowns, I think, at least one that I can recall. He could take over a game, but with the Browns likely missing the playoffs, no fault of his, but with the Browns most likely missing the playoffs, I don't see how you could argue that he has a better or worse case than TJ Watt. Both of them putting up similar numbers. I don't know how you rank one ahead of the other. And if we're just looking at sack numbers, what's the difference? How come nobody's talking about Robert Quinn? He has 17 sacks in Chicago, and 17 sacks on a non-playoff team in Chicago isn't much different than TJ Watt's 17.5 sacks on non-playoff Steelers. So if we're just going with gross sack numbers, there's so many other guys to talk about. Nick Bosa has 15 sacks, 4 forced fumbles for the 49ers, likely a playoff team. Trey Hendrickson putting up comparable numbers for the Bengals, 14 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. And Hendrickson's doing the same thing Myles Garrett and TJ Watt are doing, except he's doing it on a division winner and a playoff team. So we're not talking about Hendrickson either. So I think when you look at the defensive linemen and the candidates for defensive player of the year who all play with their hands down, I would look at Donald at 7.5 or 8 to 1 ahead of the 2 to 1 short favorites. And then I'd look at Trevon Diggs, who I think he's going to need another interception or two to really solidify it. But you can't argue with you can't argue with 11 interceptions. Those are results, and this award is about stats. And 11 interceptions to me is more impressive than 17.5 sacks when there's multiple guys with 17, 15, big numbers. So I think Diggs is very live. 7.5 to 1 is an interesting number. Football Perspective, footballperspective.com wrote about Trevon Diggs, and the author, Chase Stewart, pointed out there's some good stuff in that article. You should definitely go read it. It's on their front page. It's called "Is Trevon Diggs Having the Top Interception Season Ever?" Chase Stewart wrote it, and concludes that when you adjust for the current era, that Stephon Diggs is having one of the greatest interception seasons in defensive history. 1 out of every 36 interceptions this season has been made by Trevon Diggs, and to me that's just more impressive than these guys chasing sack records on non-playoff teams. And I think, like I said, Diggs probably needs another interception or two Another pick six would really do it for him, but I think he's in play, and this award is definitely up in the air still. The offensive rookie of the year, Mac Jones, but still in pencil. Creed Humphrey, maybe a legitimate top tier ballot candidate, center for the Chiefs. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Kyle Pitts, all up there in some order. I don't think Jamar Chase has done enough to jump Mac Jones, but like I said, this game is still in pencil. Let's see what Chase does this weekend versus the Chiefs. Could see this number on the move. The offensive player of the year, it's between Taylor and Kupp, -110, both likely. Most likely, it's like I said, each way, Taylor, Kupp, -110. I think I'd give this to Taylor. 2,000 yards from scrimmage, 20 touchdowns. Criteria-wise, I think that's more offensive player of the year worthy than necessarily MVP, because like I mentioned and explained, Cooper Kupp is having an extraordinary Jerry Rice level season, whereas Jonathan Taylor is merely having a best running back in the league season, which is cool. But there's been I could think of 20 running backs who've put up great numbers like this in different eras. Sean Alexander, Clinton Portis, guys like that come to mind, and this is just what happens when you have a high volume running back. On to coach of the year. I think this market I'd most like to see Circa post their numbers so I can get I compare them to my numbers. I think there's a lot of value still in this market. Matt LaFleur is the favorite, +175, but I've said a lot of different times that I don't think it's coach of the year material necessarily for winning 10 games for 3 years in a row with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback when you take over. And I think we could swap any number of coaches into the Green Bay situation who could replicate similar performances with the cast that LaFleur's been given, mainly Aaron Rodgers at the top. And if anyone should win Coach of the Year, it should be Aaron Rodgers. So I've said that before as well. Frank Wright, second favorite, 3-1. I think that's low. Gil pointed out on his show today when I was on earlier that Mike Vrabel has a better candidacy and potential division title to his name, and he's 12-1 compared to Reich at 3-1. Wright did some good stuff. He beat Bill Belichick on a primetime game. That was impressive. But I know a lot of people who have big tickets on Reich. I'm just not sure 3-1 is a good number for him in comparison to what Mike Vrabel's doing in the same division and likely going to win a division title without his best player. And that's to say nothing of Zach Taylor, who's flip-flopped back and forth between mid-single-digit and double-digit odds for a couple weeks now. He's as low as about 4-1 at Circa for a while, and he's now plus 750 at DraftKings this week. Taylor has the Bengals in position to win a division title and to sweep. They've already swept division rivals Steelers and Ravens for the first time since 2009. It's got to be worth something, considering how much harder it is to win in Cincinnati and how you had to build a winner than it is to say to win in Green Bay or New England. I think you have to consider Zach Taylor a legitimate candidate. And then the Bengals, they're 5-point underdogs this weekend at home to the Chiefs. So a win over the Chiefs this weekend would likely vault Taylor up to the favorite bracket level, sort of. But then on the other side of that, let's talk about the coach on the other sideline in that game. Chiefs head coach Andy Reid. I mentioned before the Chiefs haven't lost since before Halloween. They figured out their defense. They figured out their defense. They beat the Bengals this weekend. They'd have the inside track at the number 1 seed, buy in the AFC playoffs. What Andy Reid's doing in Kansas City, I don't think it's much different than what Matt LaFleur and Bill Belichick are doing in their respective situations. Reid had to revamp his offensive and defensive line this season with all the extra mileage the Chiefs have on them from back-to-back Super Bowl runs. Getting this level of performance is Coach of the Year worthy. He has the Chiefs as the favorite to win the Super Bowl right now. So I think, again, when you put those numbers in context to the favorites, Belichick 7.5-1, LaFleur +175. I don't understand how Andy Reid is still 60-1, or there's even some 100-1s hanging out there. So crazy numbers out there if you have access to some of them. Andy Reid's not the worst bet, especially when you consider they might finish with a 10-game win streak. Future Hall of Fame coach, I would not count him out of this race. Belichick, another future Hall of Fame coach who I would count out of this race at plus 750. I think 7.5 to 1. Not going to be compelling enough to get me to back Belichick with back-to-back losses to the Colts and the Bills. Probably close the window on the division title. That closes the window on the coach of the year. Although he's still the greatest coach in modern NFL history, I don't think we need to give him coach of the year this year. Mike Vrabel, one of his proteges, former player, former assistant, is 12 to 1 with a potential division title in the AFC South and a home game versus the Dolphins this weekend where they're favored. I think I'd put him closer to Frank Reich. Right? Is it Reich or Reich? I can never figure out how to go with Reich. But this is one of the numbers I think is real far off. For me personally, the losses to the Jets and the Texans would disqualify Vrabel from consideration on my ballot. And then Sean McVay, 16 to 1, pass for me. It's another elite coach who's given every opportunity to succeed. Got Stanford, Odell Beckham, Von Miller. You should win when the team makes all those moves for you. So not getting credit from me. I also don't think 16 to 1 is a great number. Farther down the list, Brian Flores down to 22 to 1, went from 65 to 1 to 60 to 35, now to 22. The only guy on this list I think has a real shot of winning without a division title. Dolphins have won 7 straight games after losing 7 straight games. On the road to face Titans this weekend. Finish up versus Patriots at home. Flores lost Coach of the Year last year in the final week of the season with a late loss. But I could see him win the award this year in the final week of the season with a win over the Patriots. Back-to-back wins to finish out the season, finish out the year on a 9-game win streak. Might do it for Flores. He's another Belichick protege, former linebacker coach in New England. I think he's a worthy candidate. Still a little bit of value on some of the numbers out there. I mean, 20 to 1 is still 20 to 1. $500 wins you 10,000 on a 20 to 1. That's not nothing. But he was 500, he was 200, he was 95, he was 65. I always feel bad telling somebody they should bet 500 to win 10,000 when they could have bet 500 to win 30,000 or 500 to win 45,000. So it's a sort of a context thing. You got to be willing to lose $500 to make 10,000, but there's still some value there. I think Flores. Like I said, Bills have to win, or Dolphins have to win their last 2 games. The criteria for any coach that's going to win this award is going to be winning your final 2 games of the season and likely a division title, with the exception of Flores. Although the Dolphins are live to win the division with 2 weeks to go. There's some crazy scenarios. I don't think it'll work out. They're like 40 to 1, 50 to 1. But yeah, back-to-back wins for the Dolphins. Finished 9-0, wild card spot. Probably enough for Flores. I'm rooting for that. Then Nick Sirianni in Philly. Real possibility at 65 to 1. Same thing. Needs to win the last 2 games. Beat the Cowboys. Might rest their starters week 16. He would only end up with a wild card spot. Might be enough. I don't necessarily think so. Key here, I think the Packers lose to the Vikings. Probably the big thing that needs to happen this next week. And then I think really this Coach of the Year market is the best market for long shots in play right now for guys off the favorite. If you're going to fade Matt LaFleur at plus 175, any guy you pick is going to have a big number. So pick your favorite, pick a basket of favorites, and see what you could do. If Packers lose this weekend, you're going to be sitting on some decent tickets. So that's my advice for Coach of the Year. I'm already on Flores. I'm on Sirianni. Who else am I on? I'm on Zach Taylor. I'm on Brandon Staley. He's drawing dead, so there's money down the drain. I'm on Andy Reid. Got a lot on Andy Reid. So I'm alive to a lot of people on this board. Just need LaFleur to kind of take a step back, and a loss to the Vikings would do that. So we're about to reach the hour mark, which I think is the longest Wide World of Weingarten episode of all the 35 plus that have happened so far. I think this was one of the better ones. I hope you extracted some good information out of this, whatever that information may be, to help your futures betting and whatnot. And I'll be back most likely tomorrow, trying to get a regular schedule going to get out the best information. Stay safe from COVID out there, and we'll talk more tomorrow.